Okay, this is Precal, section 4.3, number 67, and wanted to add this to what we had out there in case you needed it because we didn't get to this in class, or we started it but we didn't finish it. This is the cosecant value, and if you remember, if this has a radical in the numerator, it probably used to be 2 over square root of 3, and somebody multiplied it by square root of 3 over square root of 3 to rationalize it. So what we really want to look at is this 2 over square root of 3. Now, let's do this. I know that the reciprocal function of cosecant is sine, so let me just flip the fraction and say that the sine value is square root of 3 over 2. I think I had like a brain freeze in class as we were trying to do this before we got out and get it done quickly. So if you think about it, I recognize these numbers. They're coming off of a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And even though the unit circle numbers say, they've kind of, represented them in a different form just because they force the hypotenuse to be 1, we're not going to force that here. If you think about how we labeled this, we would say across from the 30 degrees is A, across from the 60 degrees is A squared root of 3, and across from the hypotenuse across from the right angle is 2A. And we could even take these A's out. And if I that's a 1A, so if I divide the A out, I get these numbers, which are nice. So remember, you got to think a minute about SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA, the sine is the opposite over hypotenuse. Which angle here, first of all, has an opposite of square root of 3? Here's the square root of 3 right here. The opposite angle is a 60 degrees, okay? So it looks like 60 degrees has an opposite of square root of 3. Does it have a hypotenuse of 2? Oh, yeah, it does. This is actually a 60-degree angle. The sine of 60 degrees is square root of 3 over 2. So what they're wanting you to do is just say that theta is 60 degrees. And they just, if we put it in radians, they want it in radians, actually. They didn't say give it. Oh, yeah, they said give it in degrees and radians. And remember, you could, if you don't remember, you could think, well, 180 divided by 3 is 60 degrees, and so pi is the same thing as 180, so that's the same thing as pi over 3 in radians. Again, you could have converted it by saying pi over 180, pi is equal to 180, and then my degrees are 60. What is, you could have used that to convert it too if you're not getting comfortable. I'm trying to show you quicker ways to do it than having to do that conversion. So that was 67. We're going to keep doing a couple more problems. 59 I had down. We did it in class, but I'm going to put it on a video just because I think it would be good to have. So 59, they ask us, they say, okay, use a calculator to evaluate each function. And we did the A part in class. I'll go ahead quickly and go through it again. When I see 42 degrees and 12 minutes, I can type that in my calculator if it were a decimal. So this is just the degree sign is what you know it is, but when you got 1 mark, that's called a minute. When you had 2 marks, that's a second, okay? So this is 42 degrees plus 12 over how many minutes are in an hour? Because degrees and hours are kind of the same. They're like 60 minutes in an hour, okay? So I could say that's 4 plus 12 over 60, which is basically 42. If you divide that out, it's 42 point, let's see, that's 1/5, so it's 0.2. Okay, so I can put this in my calculator. Let me get my calculator. So how am I going to put this in my calculator? There's not a secant button, but I do know that secant is the inverse of cosine, so I know that 1 over cosine is equal to secant. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find the cosine of 42.2, and then I'm going to hit the x to the minus 1 button, because x to the minus 1 button means 1 over x. It's just going to this flips the fraction, basically. So I'll hit cosine. First of all, this is in degrees, so I got to go to my mode. I got to make sure it's in degrees, so I'm going to have to go get the flashing cursor over degree and hit enter, and then I can hit second quit to get out of that. And then I'm going to hit cosine 42.2. I'm going to get that value, and then I'm going to hit the x to the minus 1 button that I told you about, but so I'm just going to hit x to the minus 1, and it's going to end up being 1.3. We usually go out 4 decimal points to the 10,000ths, so it's 1.34988, so it's going to be 1.3499 if I round it, so careful about your rounding. Let's look at the B part, just since it's just for another example, the B part actually doesn't have, the minutes, the seconds on it. We could have minutes and we could have seconds. If I had seconds, I would add in whatever number that is divided by 3,600, but we don't see that on 59B or any of the ones that we were assigned. We'll eventually see some, though. And so secant 8 degrees, 50, oh, I'm off on the wrong one. It's cosecant 48 degrees, 7 minutes. Okay, so this is going to be the cosecant of 48 point something, and I got to figure out what the point something is. 1 mark means minutes, so that's like 7 over 60. So let me divide in my calculator. 7 divided by 60 is 0.1666667. It repeats. So this is actually 0.11666 repeating forever, okay? So if I'm going to type this in, I'm going to be really careful. I'm going to try to get as much of this value in. So I'm going to leave what's in my calculator that pulled up, and I'm just going to add to it. I'm going to put plus in there. And I do not know what happened, but the thing skipped ahead. So I am doing the cosecant of 48.11666 repeating. That's what I've got on my calculator now. So there's probably some little flashes there in the video. I don't know, something weird happened on my end. Okay, so now I can type this in. Now here's what I know. I know that cosecant of an angle is the inverse of the sine of, or the reciprocal of the sine of the angle. So here's what I'm going to type in my calculator. I'm going to type in the sine of this 48.1166 repeating. So again, this is in degrees. I'm making sure my calculator's in degrees, and it still is. Sine of 48.116666. If I have to retype it, I'm just going to keep typing the sixes as many as I can. I even run over on my second row when I do it. And I hit enter, and I get a value. But remember, that's the sine of it. So now what I'm going to do, I'm getting this 0.74450, blah, 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 blah. But that is the sine value. To get the cosecant value, I'm going to hit x to the minus 1. And it'll flip the fraction for me. And I'm getting 1.343 2 if I round. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. You're going to type that value in, but even just getting to the cosecant and the secant on this problem were you had to think a little bit about how to use your calculator.